Hey, sports fans, Larry Eater, Run Blog Run, our program, Athletics Chat. It's number 26.
26.
Okay, we're there. Stuart, greetings from Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin.
Hello. Well, Wisconsin seems to have become famous because they keep talking about counting votes and things.
Well, I was going to wear my Mayor Daley shirt that says vote early, vote often, but yes. I think people might get a little upset. And I'm not suggesting that people vote more than once. I think you should vote once, okay? But it's what I found fascinating is that former President Bush today congratulated Mr. Biden. Very classy. But under former President Bush, there was a research project done on 190 million votes done in national elections in the U.S. from 2000 to 2008. They found 9 single examples of any type of questionable action. And the group who managed it were bipartisan, mostly Republicans, actually. So I find all this stuff fascinating. And as someone who's interested in history, I wonder about the damage that these kind of things really do. And I think they do damage. I think that it's important to be accurate. It's important to admit mistakes and things like that. So we will try to do that. I've got you here to keep me in line, Stuart. So I do appreciate that. And we forgot to say that Stuart's in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. Are you guys doing cross-country races or anything like that in the UK right now, or what's going to happen?
Well, certainly not at the moment, because for the next month, everything has stopped except the elite sport, and there's been a lot of dissatisfaction that gyms, swimming are closed, even golf, where by the nature of the sport you're social distancing. But until the 2nd of December, we are in pretty severe lockdown.
How is that being perceived in the UK? Is there as much divisiveness as we are, or do we just not hear about it? Are people frustrated and just kind of keep that British stiff upper lip?
I think most of us recognize that 46,000 dead is a horrendous number, and that we've got to do something about it. There are frustrations that they say the statistics for people in fitness centers catching and passing on the virus is ridiculously low, and it's good for the physical and mental health of people to be able to exercise. But it's only at the margins that people are objecting.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. Over here, I sense that President-elect Biden, he just announced a COVID task force. I'm pretty sure that they will do a national mask thing, and I know there'll be knuckleheads that'll scream about their whatever, their rights being taken away, and I just don't remember anything about. Well, they do have the right to be stupid. That's what it says in our Constitution, and that's my mother banned that word from our house. I was not allowed to use stupid in the house. She thought it was such a cruel word, and I hate using it. But there are times when people don't use sense wherever they're at in the globe, and there's just some basic things. I end each one of these, one of my Zoom conferences telling people, wash your hands 20 seconds, wear a mask, that kind of stuff. And I do it, and it's just, but you go to places and people don't. So it just kind of gets scary. Yeah. So last week we talked about the men athletes of the year, and we thought there were some pretty good candidates. What do you think about the women athletes of the year candidates?
Yeah, it's a very strange year because some of the people who are on the list have only run 3 times in the year. Mm-hmm. So, but then it's like that. There's 10 names have been released by World Athletics, and some of them are no surprise at all. Great to see Elaine Thompson, Hera, she calls herself now, on the list. She's had so many injuries, and for her to come back and run a world lead, it's just 1085 because he has only run a few races, 7 races, and 5 of those I think were in Jamaica, so therefore she didn't have that much competition in every race. But great to see her back. I mean, we talked previously about Faith Kipyegon. You know, this running the 1,000 meters when the sport money would have been on all the 800 runners, and she won it. Again, she's undefeated in how many races? This is 5 races over 800 and 1,000. Not bad for somebody who's a 1,500 specialist.
Sure.
I mean, she ran a 157 something for the 800.
Yeah, with her first half marathon or half or 800 since what, Beijing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, that's good. Femke Bol undefeated in six races at the 400 hurdles, but there again, you see, we haven't seen her against Sydney or Delilah. So that's one I would have a question about.
Yeah, I think she's a good talent, but I think that she's rather young. Do I think that she can get up to that next level? Yeah, I think so. But like you said, we've got some pretty amazing athletes in the 400-meter hurdles.
Yeah. I mean, Laura Muir only ran 3 1500s, won them all, didn't have real competition, but her slowest one was 3:58. And I mean, I spoke to Laura last week, and I mean, she was saying that really a couple of years ago, 4 minutes was her norm, and 3:58 would be good. Whereas this year, 3:58 was the worst of the 3, and she didn't have any races where she was pushed.
Wow.
So nice for her to be consistent at 3:58, and also she ran mainly 800s this year.
Yeah.
She ran, I think, 5 of those. So yeah, I mean, she's a very sensible lady, and she was getting out of this year what she could get out of it, and planning on next year.
What do you think about the other candidates?
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with Gidney because she set this new world record over 5,000. Sifan Hassan is an outstanding athlete, but there's always a little question in the back of one's mind because of the association with Oregon. Perhaps that's libelous to say that, but
I don't think it is.
You ask the question.
Yeah.
Helen O'Beary, as you know, is one of my favorite athletes.
Sure.
Undefeated in 3 races, and you know, somebody who has won major titles at 1,500, 5,000, saying she's going to do another couple of years and then try the roads. It's just such a talented athlete. Rojas in the triple jump, undefeated in 4, but there again, you see, I think that I don't take anything away from her because she's a great athlete, but I think that some of the other triple jumpers just didn't compete at all this year because it's such a technical event. If your training facility is closed, there's not much you can do. I mean, Laura Muir said to me, well, I'm a distance runner, all I need to do is run. But my training, I was running different places, but it wasn't really affected. But if you are looking for a technical event, it's very hard to practice. And then, of course, Yuzene breaking the World Half Marathon record. Again, you can't argue with that. So I think there's some very interesting ladies on the list. I mean, again, you have to keep saying that I don't know any of the world's sprint hurdlers who has run any serious races this year because they haven't had a chance to train very much. And so there's all that going on. It's an odd year, it's an odd list, but there are some great athletes in this. You know, all you can say to somebody is, look, if you've won every competition you're in, you can only beat the people who are there. So well done.
Yeah. I'm going to bring back Helen O'Beary for a minute. And I had just put a note down earlier this week to ask you about this. Helen was quoted in a Kenyan media source as saying that she had tried to get into that 5,000 with Les Senbet Gaudet in Valencia and was not allowed. And she was very upset about it. And while I understand that and bemoan the fact that she wasn't there, because I think that it could have been a tremendous event, it's not anything new in this sport. As we recall, with Seb Coe and Steve Ovett, there were a lot of times that Andy Norman did not put them in the same races, so that when they did compete together, my gosh, it was huge, you know?
Yeah.
And some people say that's a way to entice people into watching the sport. I go back and forth. You know, I still think that I want to get, you know, Stanley Tools involved or some big American company, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and do 800-meter races, 8 shot puts, and that kind of, and just here's the guys, have them go all around the world and boom, 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 and we get to see them compete all season. It's like that whole golden idea from the, you know, back in the 80s. I loved the golden 10,000s and some of the other things that they did. I think it was when Doha was getting involved and they, you know, dropped some bucks in. But yeah, so I felt bad about that. I really enjoy Helen like you do. And she's always a lot of fun to interview. She's a little more talkative than most of her Kenyan country people, and she's good, and she's a lot of fun, and she likes to race, and so I think that's kind of cool. I woke up this morning to the news that Pfizer has got a vaccine that they claim is 90% effective. So the U.S. stock market went crazy, and everybody's all excited. I do caution people because they still got to go through that last set of testing, and it'll probably be through the middle or end of next year before there's enough vaccines. So it's, I think we're back to the same place, my friend, wondering if we're going to have an indoor season or how's it going to work, or if you and I are going to be watching stuff on TV, and then what's going to happen outdoors. Are we going to have a Olympics? Or are we going to have a British Championships, not unlike what happened in Manchester? And will we have a U.S. Championships? I've been told that there's several different plans to do a U.S. Olympic trials, but the challenge is mostly Lane County, the county they're in that has the highest standards. Nothing, I'm not disputing the standards, but it sounds like it's rather tough. So we'll have to wait and see, as usual. I interviewed Sandy Morris this last week, one of your favorite athletes, and she did say hello and said how you would always mention her reptiles in various interviews. And she said it was always nice to see a smiling face. So she got that. She was a lot of fun. She's very thoughtful, obviously very, very competitive. And, you know, we didn't drive her too crazy. So, you know, she'll chat with us hopefully again. Any thoughts on Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed talking to her. I mean, I remember the first time I did talk to her, which was at Brussels, perhaps about 4 years ago. And I came clean with that. I said, look, I want to talk to you partly because you're a great pole vaulter, but actually I'm more interested in the snakes. And so it's been a joke between us every time I see her. I just ask for an update. And when you do this in a formal press conference, sometimes the person running is a little bit taken aback when she tells me that she has got additional lizards, a new monitor lizard, that she's got so many snakes and all this. So it can be quite hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I think she is. Our sport needs characters. You know, we don't just want people who run the track quickly and then talk about it in quite a boring way. Sandy is very engaging and talks about a lot of interesting things.
Cool. Okay. We had a little bit of a challenge there, but I think we're doing fine. It's the wonders of intercon. You know, if they who was it? the wireless line that went underneath the Atlantic Ocean in the 1850s or something like that. I think they still use that same line sometimes. Sam Kendricks, I spoke with last week too, and I have to tell you, I told Mike Deering, our producer, afterwards, that Sam is one of the most articulate people I've ever spoken with. He is enthusiastic. He gets into it. He took the time to explain why certain runways are faster than others and how what appeals to him, what appealed to like a Steve Hooker, what appeals to some of the other athletes out there, Piotr Lysick. What I really like about Sam is his obvious love of the sport, his love of his event, his appreciation for his competitors, and his realization that there are always going to be better athletes, but it's how you compete. And he was just a lot of fun. Like when I interviewed Christian Taylor this past summer, Christian was driving all the way across Austria, and it was pretty funny. I mean, his Wi-Fi was really good. Sam was in his car, I think, drinking a Slurpee, and then we had Ryan Krauser the other day, and he drove around for half of his event and then sat and chatted with us. But it's really nice just catching up with him. What experiences have you had with Sam?
Well, I first met Sam in Oslo 2 years ago. I just went up to him completely cold and said, could I have an interview with you? And he said 7 o'clock this evening in the bar. And you know, sometimes people say that and you wonder if it's going to happen. Never for a millisecond did I doubt that he would be there. And of course, being a military man, he wasn't there at 7 o'clock. He was there at 5 to 7.
Yes. I mean, you see that inside him, and I think it's kind of fun. He's going to open his 2021 competitions on New Year's Day. There'll be a streaming video from Texas, and then his dad, who's his coach, is going to do a clinic beforehand too, which sounds really cool. So I'm going to make sure that we get a little bit up about that. I think those things are a lot of fun. Why do we love the pole vault?
Well, I think there's several things. It certainly helps that over the years, from Le Villenie onwards, the top people have been characters.
Yes.
And showmen or showwomen.
Yeah.
I mean, Le Villenie used to have this ability to just command the entire arena. And normally they say that field events are marginalized, but you know, if Le Villenie was about to jump, everyone was quiet and watching.
Yeah.
Also, you know, pole vaulting, I have learned, is more than just getting a pole, jumping and getting over the bar, because there's the issue of the strategy. Like Sam will always jump more than Mondo. You know, just the way some people like to come in and keep jumping, others like to wait until quite late. Sometimes people wait too long. I mean, one of my favorite pole vaults was the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow 2014 on the wettest day in the history of the planet.
Yeah.
And Sally Peake from Wales got the bronze medal, and she wasn't the third best vaulter in the field, but she just managed the competition brilliantly. And better vaulters than her on paper came in too late and made no mark. Whereas she got in early, got something there, she judged how the competition would work and did it brilliantly. And then, of course, you have the issue that I've learned to ask, how many poles did you use? That, you know, a pole vaulter will turn up with up to 10 poles and will work through them.
Yeah.
So this, you know, while we just see people jumping, they're actually thinking, should I skip this height and save myself? Or should I do every one? Should I continue with the pole I'm using? Should I go for a longer, stronger pole, which is harder to manage, which will help me to go higher? You know, just all this is going on. And it's just such a fascinatingly technical. And again, until I started meeting people who explained it to me, I never asked the question, how do you actually get your poles from one event to the next? And if your name is Mondo, the answer is your poor mother drives from Sweden 4,000 miles to the south of Europe because she doesn't trust an airline.
Yeah. No. It's just, it was interesting because I guess Elena Duplantis, his mom, was speaking at a coach's clinic this last weekend. I'll have to pull the video up and do a link for that as well. When I talked to Sandy, I was asking her about the competition in Doha, and I used the reference that pole vault reminds me of a chess game while flying in the air. And she says sometimes it is, but she said in Doha, with her and, the Russian vaulter, they went height for height, I think 5 times before they got to 595, or 495, excuse me. And then Sandy missed 3 times. And on the 3rd time, the Russian, cleared. And I think that we've seen that with Sam Kendricks too. It's like, hey, let's see what we can do. And it's fascinating for me to watch. I mean, I just remember I was telling Sam about Lausanne in 2017, and that I was watching, and at one end on the left side was the vaulters, Lysick and Kendricks, and then on the other end was Maria Lazinskaya high jumping. And we had just seen some masterful races and some great jumping, and it just Lausanne is always a nice event, and go ahead.
Now, just to say, Anko, the other thing which I'd forgotten to mention is this situation where you get towards the end of the competition when one person is over the bar and the other one isn't. And they may decide actually to skip, recognizing that they cannot win by clearing the bar. They need to get the next height. So there's that kind of strategy. And of course, by doing that, you may sacrifice second place in order to improve your chances of winning. So all that going on, I can't think of another discipline where, there's all that going on. Perhaps a little bit of the high jump, but the high jump is never quite as dramatic. And the way that Sam and Mondo have such great respect for each other, the way that Sandy and Katie Najok and others, I mean, I always remember the World Indoors in Birmingham, where Katie Najok didn't quite achieve what she wanted to. But rather than sulking, going off, she stayed there and acted as Sandy Morris's coach for the rest of the competition, encouraging her, helping her to make the decisions. And I just thought, you've just lost the biggest competition of your life so far. And rather than thinking about yourself, you're giving every encouragement to Sandy to help her to go on to win. And you wouldn't get that in every sport, and you wouldn't get it even in every discipline of our sport.
Now, it's again one of the things that we remind everybody about how lucky we are in athletics, that the majority of athletes get along pretty darn well. Speaking of an event where the athletes get along well, they're just a little bigger, the shot put. And, I have to tell you that one of my favorite interviews of all times was Valerie Adams and Greg Rutherford at one of the British meets, and you were there. It's got to be 16 or 17. And Valerie is one of the funniest people I have ever met. And she has a caustic sense of humor. It's wonderful. And she was annoyed about, I think I asked her about an athlete who had tested positive, which is something that she's had to deal with a lot. And she was wonderful. But I've always loved watching her compete. I think that she shows huge composure.
Mm.
But I also think she shows patience with media who don't know squat about the shot put.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
I mean, I love her press conferences because you really feel that she's there to have fun. And
Yeah.
she's not there to say the politically correct thing. Now, I remember exactly the one you're talking about because it was the Belarusian
Yes.
who had got the gold medal in London and then tested positive. And someone asked, perhaps you, asked her what her feelings were towards that individual. And she just said, well, I have no ill feelings towards her at all. But if she decides to stay in Belarus and never leave it again, that's fine with me.
Yes. That was wonderful, you know. And the other one I miss is Greg Rutherford. Greg was always good at a presser.
Yeah.
I like to describe Greg as the Rodney Dangerfield of the long jump. I would get infuriated when especially Americans would say stuff to me about, well, you know, he was lucky he won. And I'd have to remind them that everybody was competing with the same winds and the same runway, and he was able to keep his stuff together. And, you know, it just, and that's the name of the game, and that he won the things he did, European, Commonwealth, World Champs, and Olympics, totally rocks. And Greg, we miss you. And I always wanted to see a competition in his backyard. I just missed that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
He was one of the first guys to do that.
Two little Greg stories. You know, Dan Pfaff was coaching him in London 2012. And Dan said to me, you know, Greg wasn't the best long jumper in that competition, but he was the one who worked out first how to deal with the wind.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, he did it.
Yeah. And the other thing was that, you know, Greg always felt that he didn't get the credit for what he had achieved. And I remember him winning the Europeans in Zurich in 2014, coming into the presser and saying, well, chaps, I seem to have fluked another one.
I like that.
So
I like that.
Getting it in before anyone else did.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, those are the kind of people that you get a kick out of, you know. Have you had much experience with Ryan Krauser or Joe Kovacs?
No.
I think they're both, I mean, I really like the shot putters, and I got to spend time with them, you know, many meets, but the 2011 Fannie Blake FBK games, Fannie Blake Blanker Cohen's, I would go to Hengelo almost every, you know, for years, thanks to Jos. Hermans would get me over there and help me out, and they would have the shot put on a Saturday in the center of town, and Hengelo is a fun city, and the thing that I love about it is they have one beer brand, Grolsch, and it's dark or it's light. And the big place where you drink beer and they had Wi-Fi all night was next to the head shop in town, and marijuana was legal. So the kids would be riding their bikes around, kind of goofed out. But it was just fun. But watching the shot, these guys had so much fun, and it was Christian Cantwell and the whole crew. And that night in the hotel, they had an indoor Olympic competition where they had lawn darts, foosball, pool. They had a couple other crazy events. They were actually throwing an athlete across the room, too. And I believe that there may have been adult beverages involved. But they just had fun. And it was really nice to see these guys just have a good time. And I interviewed Ryan this week, and I've got to interview him in small bits before, but I really like him. He's, again, quite articulate, knows his event. He's from a great throwing family. And, you know, he, as you can appreciate, I asked him some pretty goofy questions. So he survived 40 minutes. And as you know, Stuart, that's like in dog years, 400 years after you've been interviewed with me. So, you know, it can be a challenge. What about the Joe Kovacs we enjoyed last year in Doha with his wife, who was his coach? I just thought that was really neat. Well, let's get back to our favorite topic every week, the Tokyo Olympics. How's our Olympic watch this week? Anything new?
Well, on Wednesday, I am on a briefing from Tokyo. So ask me next week, and I'll have some information for you.
Well, I think I've got a link for that too. I'm going to have to try to get on that, and we'll see what transpires.
I think it's still 50-50.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, actually, on Sunday morning, Al Jazeera, in their wisdom, had me on telling the world whether the Olympics were going to take place. And I said maybe.
That's good. I like Al Jazeera. They do a nice job on their sports, although most Americans think that they're a terrorist group, or many do. They don't understand that it's a wind, but or a nice media group. And the time I was on there with Mr. Rowbottom, he wore that weird green tie from inside the GameStop and I just thought he was crazy. But we knew that, many of the media are rather eccentric, and British media, with you not included, are a little strange sometimes too. But yeah, the Olympics, I think it just can go either way. It's nice to hear about the vaccine, but we'll have to see just how it's going to play out. What are you hearing about? Is there more conversation about the London Marathon and how successful it was, or any thoughts there?
I think it was perceived to have been as successful as it could be. I mean, it was really unfortunate that it was such a terrible day and it was so cold.
Yeah.
The runners literally saying that they'd never been so cold in their lives. I talked to Brent Lakatos, who won the marathon one, and he said, well, I was all right because I wore a jacket the whole time because I knew it was going to be cold. So I just never took my jacket off. And again, there were actually some people running that the commentator was saying, starting off with the jacket, they'll be taking that off after a lap or two, but they never did.
So
I think that was an issue. But I mean, I think that having a marathon with no spectators and not on the streets with people cheering, not having everyone running together, so that you have an element of the women, the men, the wheelchairs all potentially being in on the course at the same time. The fact that none of that happened made it a totally different animal. But at the end of the day, we had a very surprising men's result. We had a probably fairly predictable women's result.
Sure.
We had a couple of exciting wheelchair races. So, it worked. They got it out there. I mean, I don't know whether you saw the thing today that the World Athletics has nominating 3 events for the sort of COVID prize of the year. Like it's the Monaco Diamond League, the Garden Clash in pole vault, and the World Half Marathon, simply to recognize what those events did and putting their event on. And I think similarly, the London Marathon just needs credit for putting them on.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct. I think that it's very, very difficult right now.
One thing which will be interesting next year, if they all happen, if it's a marathon every week almost during the fall, suddenly marathons will be what everyone's talking about. And I know that some of the wheelchair people who are able to do this in ways that the runners cannot are thinking, well, perhaps we'll do all 4.
Yeah, I know it's going to be interesting.
Berlin, London, New York, Chicago, Boston, whatever. That just that suddenly it will be the marathon period.
I think that it's very interesting that all the marathons are going to the fall. I'm not sure that they had any other choices, but it's rather it's problematic. I think that there will be the opportunity to do probably 3 of the 4 or 3 of the 5 marathons. But again, I still think 2021 is going to be a challenge with whatever event you put on. I believe we're going to be able to have more track meets. And I hope that the vaccine will be enough that it makes a ton of sense. But we just don't know. And we've just got to be very careful. So people have got to really, watch themselves. I wanted to talk with you about British athletics. Anything new there? How are they doing on? We know that they're going to do a indoor championships. We know they're going to do 2 Diamond League meets. Is that correct? Or 1 Diamond League meet right now, and 1 indoor?
There's no indoor Grand Prix. Both the Diamond Leagues, that is the anniversary games in London and the Birmingham event, which will be in Gateshead, are in the schedule. But Joe Coates was saying that really they can only do Gateshead if there are spectators allowed.
Yeah. So what's your check on? What's your thoughts about will there be spectators?
I mean, it depends on the virus. We were building up towards spectators here. I mean, like there were some soccer games which had 1,000 spectators, but then suddenly, rather than moving on to the next stage, the government said no, back to no spectators and have a month's lockdown. So, if the vaccine, and of course there are several vaccines in development. If vaccines become readily available and life gets back to normal by, say, April, May, June, then yes, we could see British Championships and the 2 Diamond Leagues in the way we're used to. But if not, I'm afraid, well, and of course you're back in the situation as to whether there's going to be Olympics, and if there aren't Olympics, then there's no real pressure to have a British Championship and Olympic trials. But I think at the moment we're hoping that the vaccine will make it possible for things to open up. People are talking about perhaps by Easter things will become possible. I mean, the reason that London Marathon moved to the autumn is they simply felt if they went for an April date, there would be very little chance of it being normal. If you put it in October, then you've got a chance.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Well, my friend, we are at our end of our time this week. Thank you again, Stuart. And we will chat on Athletics Chat number 27. Stay safe, my friend. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, Athletics Chat 26. Thanks to Mike Deering for producing it, and thanks to Stuart Weir for chatting with me. Stay safe. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder. This is Athletics Chat 26, the epilogue. Stuart Weir, Larry Eder. Stuart's in Oxford, England. Larry's in wherever the hell he's at, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. We try to solve all the problems in the athletics world week by week, and I think we're rather successful. Today we talked about the women candidates for the Athletes of the Year by World Athletics. There's 10 of them. We like all of them. The big issue is this. There was rather light competition for most. Laura Muir, 3 times at 1,500, all under 358. You had a relatively young 400-meter hurdler who had 6 nice wins. Times were modest. She didn't get to compete against Cindy McLaughlin or Delilah Muhammad. So you're kind of wondering where that's at. But all in all, I think it's a good group, and it'll be kind of fun to see who comes out as the Athlete of the Year. We also talked about Sandy Morris, the American pole vaulter. I interviewed her this week, and again, she's always a lot of fun. she enjoys Stuart because Stuart reminds her each time they interview about all the reptiles she has. And Sandy was really interesting. I told her I had to admire her for her ability to juggle her personal life with her private life and what to show on social media and whatnot. And she's pretty open about things, and I think that's great. Also interviewed Sam Kendricks this week, and both Stuart and I think Sam's wonderful, as we have the same feeling about Sandy. Sam is one of the more articulate athletes in any event, and he even took the time to describe what runways are better for what athletes, which was really kind of interesting. And we geeked out for a while, which was a lot of fun. Also interviewed Ryan Krauser this week. Stuart has not interviewed him, but who person he has is Valerie Adams. And we were talking a Belarusian athlete who had tested positive. And when Valerie was asked what would any comments or thoughts about this athlete, and Valerie said, well, it'd be nice if she stayed in her own country the rest of her life. She has a biting sense of humor, wonderful sarcasm, and good for the sport. And she's just picked up she's moved to a new coach, and we look forward to seeing her compete. She's had, I think, 2 children now, and really enjoy Valerie. She's a lot of fun. When we were interviewing Valerie back in 16, 17, we were also interviewing Greg Rutherford in the long jumper, British long jumper, who won 2012, also won a European Championships in 14, Commonwealth Games, as well as a World Championships, and came back and medaled in the 16 Olympics as well. Class act, a lot of fun. Always wanted to see his long jump competition in his backyard and him running up the hills in the backyard too. So good guy. Miss him. Big news of the week, Pfizer, an American medical company, pharmaceutical company, claims that one of their vaccines is 90% effective, which is pretty impressive. Great on a press release. We'll have to see if it's real or not to disparage Pfizer, a fine company. But even if it is real, everything they say, it's going to take them a good 6 months to a year to get it all run out. So do we have major events next year? That's the question. And with lockdown in the UK, I think it started last week and it goes till December 3rd. And we're wondering if there's going to be a lockdown here. We will have to see. So it's going to be a challenge this season. Stuart and I will be here weekly. This was Athletics Chat number 26. If you like RunBlogRun, like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube for our videos. Thanks to Mike Deering, who's producing Athletics Chat and Socialing the Distance, and he's from the Shoe Addicts. And thanks to Stuart Weir for putting this all together. Larry Eater with RunBlogRun, signing off.